Hi, everybody. Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the living room. We are filming inside tonight because the world is just chaos out there. Just chaos. And tonight, I definitely wanted to be able to focus because we're going back to the grassroots. On the conservative side, sort of an anti-feminist, with some really interesting perspectives that I think are all her own. So it's going to be really interesting. I really wanted to be able to focus and just not have any as few distractions as humanly possible, which, good luck. Right? Anyway, like the video if you enjoy my content, and subscribe to the channel for more feminism from a materialist perspective, because we're going to drag feminism back to the real world, whether it likes it or not. And, share it around, maybe spread the word a little bit. That would be fantastic. We got to 500, and we're going to be doing our t-shirt sweepstakes real soon. I will have more information for y'all about that after Tuesday when I have my meeting with my web developer, so. Whee! Anyway, let's go see what Greta Aurora has to say. Alrighty, so this is Greta Aurora, who was apparently not concerned with her name being easy to say.
As I've said before, I am an anti-feminist because I am a classical liberal and I am for equality. Feminism is not a liberal movement. It is a collectivist movement rooted in the Marxist view of history as being all about the oppression of the powerless by the powerful.
Okay, that is just right away into some nitty-gritty political theory there. Liberal is kind of a word that a lot of us take for granted, isn't it? I went ahead and looked it up, just real quick. Liberalism is a political and moral philosophy based on the rights of the individual, liberty, consent of the governed, which would sound like a collective thing, and equality before the law. This should all sound very familiar to anyone in the Western world, especially liberals espouse a wide array of views depending on their understandings of these principles. Because this is a really general term. Okay? It's a big umbrella. A lot of stuff falls under this term here. They generally support individual rights, civil rights, human rights, which would sound collective to me, again, but, liberal democracy, secularism, rule of law, economic and political freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, private property, and a market economy. Yeah, all very familiar stuff. I don't hear anything in here about being against collectivism, like liberalism became a distinct movement in the Age of Enlightenment, gaining popularity among Western philosophers and economists. Liberalism sought to replace the norms of hereditary privilege, state religion, absolute monarchy, and divine right of kings. Right, which, because all that's very not exactly conducive to anybody determining the course of their own lives, even those with the power, right? So hypothetically, we're all for all of this stuff. Well, even conservatives at this point most people, I don't think, would willingly go back to any of that. And I don't think that's, see, and that's part of the problem, is that what was once considered radically liberal is now considered just the way things are. That's what happens when you found a country on something. They also entered mercantile policies, royal monopolies, and other barriers to trade, instead of promoting free trade and marketization. Yay. Which is great when that means individuals can start to accrue personal wealth, which was revolutionary when used to be the only person that owned anything was the king, really. And in England, he would own entire forests. Giant, like if you, went and actually hunted in there, you would be executed. Fun stuff. So, having the rulers, actually the people with any sort of authority, actually be answerable to the rule of law is something that I'm definitely in favor of. But again, that sounds pretty collectivist to me. Yeah. But let's keep going. Let's see. John Locke is often credited with founding liberalism based on the social contract, arguing that each man, I assume they mean person, human, each man has a natural right to life, liberty, and property, and governments must not violate these rights. A natural right. It doesn't say anything about God there. It must be nice. And it talks about how, the British Revolution in 1688, the American Revolution, the French Revolution all used these philosophies to justify the armed overthrow of royal sovereignty, and the murder thereof. In at least two of those cases, right? In 1688 and 1789, the kings both lost their heads. Yikes. Radical, right? These ideas have led to, violent uprisings. I guess it makes sense why they make some people nervous.
Of course, feminists will define power to mean anything that happens to serve their agenda, while completely ignoring the very real, albeit invisible, power of women, which I have spoken about many times before.
Because I guess these ideas are still powerful, but they're not against collectivism, and feminism is not. God forbid that we unite as a class to agitate for our own needs, right? Ooh, no. That just wouldn't be a liberal thing at all. What?
What enrages me the most about feminists is that they seem to be fighting against and yearning for the same thing. When they fight against it, they call it oppression, and when they fight for it, they call it safety. There are very, very few exceptions to this among feminists. Feminism as an ideology labels protection as oppression, and it seeks to liberate women from this oppression.
Yikes. That's a pretty solid misreading of everything. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the needing protection from things is part of the oppression. Right? Just having an environment. Because guess what? There are a lot of people out there who have a lot more influence on our environment than maybe you or I do. Right? There are groups of people who certainly do. And there are known and proven ways of creating safer environments that people just don't do. Because they're expensive, or because what they're doing is making somebody money, or whatever. Because capitalism, because the market. Because the liberal fucking market. Yeah, that's worked out so well for everyone. But collectivism bad. Right.
But freedom is dangerous, and feminists demand protection from the dangers of liberation, which takes us back to the starting point. Liberalism, in its original, true sense, is all about treating people as individuals and guaranteeing the personal freedom of each individual.
This is kind of a random thought, but you remember the poem that's at the bottom of that statue? Give me your poor, huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The only individual involved there is the fucking statue.
Feminism is not a liberal movement because it doesn't strive for freedom for women. Instead, it strives for safety. They want to solve all problems they perceive in society via more legislation. What they fail to realize is that you cannot legislate yourself into safety.
Okay, I sort of, don't disagree with that. But ironically, she's referring to what we would usually call liberal feminism, right? As opposed to radical feminism. This would be mainstream feminism. So, I guess that makes sense why she would be talking about that. But like, how does she not know that? I don't know. I think she's trying to take back the word and like, she has a case because, as we know, lib femmes are really kind of fashy, right?
Recently, here in England, the murder of a young woman was all over the news. Sarah Everard was kidnapped and killed while walking home from a friend's house. Feminists all over the world have used this woman's tragic, horrific death to share how they are all afraid when walking alone in the dark, and claiming all men are potential murderers, rapists, abusers, and harassers.
Well, they are. But that's not the same as saying that they are all those things. Why do people have so much trouble with this? Where, like, the person is not the system, and the system is not the person, and neither is necessarily directly responsible for the other. Like, it's like two sides of a coin are not the same side of the coin, even though they're both sides of the coin. Mind-boggling, I know.
This is clearly not an ideology that values individuality. Feminists are collectivists by nature who paint all men and all women with two very broad brushes.
Okay. Being a bigot, having prejudices against giant swaths of people, is not the same as understanding that certain large groups of people have certain material things in common. Okay? That's not the same thing at all. That would be, I guess you'd call that a false equivalency, right? The whole point of the collectivist thing is to, give individuals the maximum amount of tools to determine the direction of their lives. Yeah, it's about self-determination through collective uh, action, but collective structure, you know. Because when we're all moving in kind of the same direction, then many hands make light work. We can accomplish a lot more than if everybody is in it for themselves. That's just how the world freaking works. And I don't think many people, when you put it that way, would really debate that.
Think about this for a moment. What other group of people is routinely condemned as a group for the actions of a few? I can't think of any group apart from men whom this happens to.
What the fuck is she talking about? Okay, seriously, like, I'm so... That is so funny. What the fuck is she talking about? I have heard various members of various, minority groups complain of this very thing. If a woman does something, wow, look, a woman did a thing. She's a woman doctor. Women can be doctors. Look at that. Because she represents all women. Weird. Or, the black guy on the news, comes to represent all black guys. Right? When you don't necessarily encounter a lot of a certain kind of people, the few of them you do, your mind uses them to fill in that space. Really, I think we all do this. Right? Because you have to have some idea. The thing is to be conscious of the fact that you don't actually have the personal experience, okay? That you've seen them on TV, okay? It's about the same amount of knowledge that you have of a forensic lab, right? Probably.
Feminists have been openly demonizing men as a group for so long that they have normalized discrimination against men.
Wah. Now, don't get me wrong here. I have 2 sons and a husband. Anybody calling me anti-man will just get laughed out of the room. Okay. But, when a group's been in control for as long as they have, and when they got to write the rules, yeah, they've done some pretty heinous shit because they could. Because some of them are fuckers. Don't get me wrong. Some women are absolutely stone cold sociopaths as well. That falls on both sides. More of them tend to be men, which is, interesting, but a topic for another time. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes women get to blow off some steam. Sometimes we get to point out some of the awful things that men do or have done or are clearly planning to do. Because all of them are potential. Yeah, I've said this before. It's been a while since I've said it, but I've said it before. Apparently, only like 5 to 10% of them are actually these violent, horrible people. And in places where the culture is more collectivist, instills more of a sense of connectedness between people from an early age, there are fewer sociopaths, or at least fewer people who test that way. Yeah. The book that I read said that there might be people with that brain type who have learned the behaviors, the social behaviors, which, you know what? I'm fine with that. Fake it till you make it, right? So the point is, though, that A, collectivism good. B, sometimes men do bad shit, and we should be able to talk about it and call them out. And that's not normalizing discrimination against, as opposed to what's been done to women, as opposed to what is being done to women. I really kind of want to go to this parallel universe where this woman lives because it sounds fun to me.
I want women to understand freedom is dangerous. Safe freedom is an oxymoron.
I don't agree with that necessarily. I think that's a very limiting belief, right? Oh my God. Perfect safety, I think, is impossible under any circumstance because at any time, like a meteor could crash down on us from space, right? Like you're never going to be 100% safe doing anything. But you can minimize the risk significantly, especially, with, I don't know, methodical scientific method, application of the scientific method and construction of infrastructure and education and all that good collective shit. And then you have a system in which the individual can function at their best, which is the whole fucking point.
You cannot have both safety and freedom. You can only have one. And I personally would choose dangerous freedom over boring security any day.
Ooh, she's so edgy, right? I love that haircut too. Are those turf bangs?
Without hesitation. A handful of lunatics, such as a member of the Green Party, have proposed a curfew for men to help keep women safe at night. I'd like to remind these crazy people that one thing about criminals is that they don't tend to follow the law.
Yeah, that's true. Like, not everybody's going to follow the laws. So why bother having them, Really. I don't even really know why I bother eating. I'm just going to get hungry again later. Why I bother washing my clothes? They're just going to get dirty again. It's stupid, really. I feel like maybe there's just a little part of her brain that's broken.
There will always be criminals out there, and violent criminals should be severely punished.
Yeah, but I don't know how exactly you're going to do that without laws saying that stuff is against the rules and what we do when people break the rules. That's what laws are. Criminals don't follow them. That's true. And I'm not sitting here being like, woohoo, the criminal justice system, but like, we should try. Is she an anarchist? She hasn't said anything about that. I watched several of her videos actually, and I picked this one special just for you guys, ladies, guys and gals, gines and guys. Language. Anyway, I have not heard her say anything about being an anarchist. I know she says she's a liberal, but I don't think anarchists are very interested in marketizing anything.
But we shouldn't blame all men for the crimes committed by a few monsters.
Yes, agreed. Because that's not how it works. And anyone with any, strong grasp of what they're talking about is not doing that.
And women should not feel unsafe just because some people sometimes fall victim to violent crimes.
Yeah, actually, depending on who you are and where you live and what you do for a living and stuff like that, again, risk levels for the individual can vary widely. Okay, there are a lot of things you can do to raise your level of risk and your likelihood of experiencing bad things. And there are a lot of things you can do to mitigate and lower your level of risk to try and avoid experiencing bad things. And just because bad things happen in the world doesn't mean we shouldn't learn from our environment and try to avoid them.
Men, in general, are vastly more likely to defend women rather than hurt us. Feminists.
Okay, I don't think that is particularly incendiary, radical, what I want to say. I don't think that's a very strong statement. I think that's true. If only because it, makes their egos feel good. Right? And they might think they're going to get some afterwards because they've seen a few too many movies. Or maybe it's just an instinct. I don't know. I'm not a man. Point remains. I don't disagree with that statement. And it does not change the fact that the few who would, snatch you from the dangerous situation only to then, take you into bushes and rape you, are very prolific. And they don't wear name tags.
Also tend to conveniently ignore the fact that a lot more men are attacked and murdered than women all over the world. Yes, men are more likely to murder, but they are more likely to be murdered.
Okay, so that just demonstrates that they're more violent. I don't see how that proves your point, or how it's necessarily directly related to the fucking topic here. Come on. Whataboutism alert. Whataboutism alert. Wah, wah, wah.
2. I deplore the way women are treated in many Muslim countries, and I want feminists to realize that the women in these countries are actually very safe because they are not allowed to leave their houses alone.
Okay. And this goes back to another thing that I like to say a lot, which is talk about freedom, like freedom for whom and to do what. Okay, because the freest country, according to, was it the Wall Street Journal, I think it was, a few years ago, was, Taiwan, something, one of those Southeast Asian places. And I looked into it, and people there live in, like, parking space-sized apartments, all packed together in rooms, because it's the freest economy. But those people are not free to, like, play outside or have privacy. So freedom is just kind of thrown around, and it's not usually defined very well. It's a good word. It's a positive word, right? But freedom for whom? To do what? and how do you achieve that?
They are being obsessively protected by their families, which makes them safe. but they are not free. Women used to be obsessively protected by their families and institutions.
Okay. They're not safe from rape or beatings or being blocked from education. They're not safe from a lot of shit. What the fuck are you talking about? They're not safe from forced birth. They're not safe from being locked up in their homes. Safe from what? Safe from what?
In the West, too. For example, at university accommodations, there used to be a curfew for female students, but not for males.
Okay, that is some paternalistic bullshit.
Universities were determined to protect young women's innocence. Some of the early second-wave feminists wanted women to be able to decide how they wanted to spend their time. As Camille Paglia once said, they wanted the freedom to risk rape.
And I want the freedom to not have to fucking worry about it, because anybody who, shows those kinds of tendencies is going to do so before they just are a full-on rapist. All right. There are methods for identifying people like that and treating them or shunting them away from mainstream society to protect people. We're just being like, well, bad people going to bad, so whatever, let's just let them wander the streets, and when they really do something bad, we'll lock them up, I guess, and then they can make license plates or whatever for the government. And, we wonder why things are a mess.
This strikes me as an enormously powerful message. This is what sexual liberation should be all about. We shouldn't force anyone to take mindless risks.
Isn't that exactly what she's talking about, though? Because she's downplaying and just pissing all over the idea of any kind of collective action or collective structures or any of that. Oh, golly. What was that last thing?
What sexual liberation should be all about.
Oh, right. I was going to say, no, of course you would love Camille Paglia, right? Mm-hmm. We saw her a couple of weeks ago, Miss Rock and Roll. Risk the freedom to risk rape. I mean, don't you have that just about everywhere anyway?
We shouldn't force anyone to take mindless risks, but we should give everyone the freedom to do so if that's what they want to do. And with freedom comes responsibility.
I mean, yeah, but okay. So you're advocating for giving people the freedom to do whatever the fuck they want, no matter how stupid. But if you had the responsibility, then you wouldn't be doing anything really stupid. Wouldn't that just take, like, the bottom 30% of stupidest things off the table immediately if you had any level of responsibility? So that's contradictory just right there, I would say.
A truly sexually liberated woman should be aware of the basics of male-female sexual dynamics.
No, a 12-year-old should be aware of the basics of male-female sexual dynamics. Come on.
She should be aware that male demand for sex always exceeds female supply.
Wait, let her finish. This is good.
Aware that male demand for sex always exceeds female supply. That's why prostitution can only be criminalized, but never eradicated.
Ooh. Okay. How old would you say she is? I don't mean to be rude. Maybe 30. Maybe at the most. Right? Which gives me almost a decade on her. So I'm just going to say this is clearly not taking middle-aged ladies into account, middle-aged men into account. Female supply will never outpace male demand? Honey, yes, it does. It's called being 40. Not all men are 25-year-olds. Okay. And 25-year-olds can be taught. Hell, you might want to start even younger than that.
A sexually liberated woman must be delighted and grateful she is not dependent on men to provide for her, unlike her female ancestors.
I suppose that would be the definition of liberated, but like we're talking sexually here. I mean, it sounds like she's talking like financially. It's late, sorry. Or like materially. Well, and I see the connection, obviously, but it kind of seems like a bit of a non-sequitur, or like left. That's a different topic. Whether or not a sexually liberated woman needs to be a financially liberated woman is a whole like kettle of fish, right? That's a whole argument that I am not going to comment on right now because it's a separate fucking topic. Okay.
She is not forced to marry a man she doesn't love.
Well, yeah.
And she should embrace her role as the gatekeeper of sex. She should revel in her freedom and rights and embrace her responsibility to clearly express what she does and does not want.
Okay, I really do strongly agree with this. But I don't think it just applies to women. I mean, obviously, men are pretty good at saying what they want because they are trained that that's how they are supposed to behave. And it's really easy to just kind of be amazed at how confident they can be sometimes, right? Especially about some of the craziest shit. But yeah, you should be open and honest about what the hell you want in your sexual relationships, whether they're with men, women, whatever, both. Because if you lie to your sexual partners, you're just hurting both of you because you're lying to them. And then they're not going to know how to make you happy because you didn't fucking tell them. Duh.
From a man. She should also be aware of the dangers of her liberation. She should know that there will always be depraved sex criminals out there, most of whom are men.
Yeah, I think we all know that. The trick is that we're trying to limit their reach and not maybe encourage that actively, which is what liberal politics has been doing for a while now, which is frankly why we're all here. Oh gosh, this lady seems really confused to me.
The feminist idea that we can somehow teach boys and men not to rape is ludicrous. You cannot teach someone not to commit a crime. Rapists and murderers are sick people who are aware what they are doing is wrong.
Yes, but wouldn't it be nice if they actually feared consequences? Because that seems to be the one way to really get through to people who just don't understand the social contract, which, by the way, is what liberalism is based on. Remember from earlier? John Locke and all that. And people who don't understand the social contract, and so they really don't know how to follow it, well, you punish them. Okay? There are consequences. I'm not necessarily talking prison. Like, you don't go to prison for speeding, for example. It's a random example. But, like, there are collective systemic methods that we can employ to discourage these people that are effective. Is it going to be 100% effective? No. But you don't just have to throw your hands up and be like, well, whatever. I'm free to do whatever I want because I'm a liberated woman. But I guess I better go buy a gun. Even though that, increases my chances of being shot.
Women need to understand that risk is the price of freedom. As we navigate through life, we must all take responsibility for evaluating the risks and benefits of our actions.
I mean, yes, you should, in any, moment to moment, not just go, whatever, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't care, it doesn't matter. Because the system will save me, blah, or something. I've never met anyone like that. But you shouldn't do that. Because it's not going to work very well. However, What?
We must all take responsibility.
Right. I mean, if we all each completely discreetly and without, I don't know, even discussing it with one another, I guess, take responsibility for the risks in any given situation. I mean, well, imagine if there was an actual emergency and people didn't communicate with one another and each person just individually took responsibility for the risks that they personally could see. It might go okay, but it probably wouldn't go as well as if they actually coordinated with one another and worked as a team.
For evaluating the risks and benefits of our actions. We cannot be exempt from this responsibility if we wish to be free and equal to men. And
Whoa, 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 whoa. Free and equal to men. I would submit that we already are equal to men, and that yeah, in order to be a self-determining individual, you have to take some responsibility for yourself. That's true. You have to do things like feed yourself and clothe yourself and bathe yourself and get yourself up in the morning and shit like that. Yeah, that's true. And clean your room, I guess. Right? Not bad advice, but it's kiddie stuff, right? And it's very convenient to just stop there. It's very easy to just stop there and not look beyond the end of your nose and try and communicate and coordinate with the people around you. But that's short sighted and dumb.
the existence of a few dangerous criminals is not a reason for us not to enjoy our lives.
Who the fuck said that? Who said it was? Who said it was? Because they'd be a fearmonger. It's weird because the last thing I heard, liberals were going around talking about defunding the police, which seems to be the opposite of that. Sort of. I don't know. She uses the term liberal differently than everyone else on the planet in this century. So she's trying to take it back.
I wish I could advise people to carry weapons of self-defense, but unfortunately here in the UK, even carrying pepper spray is illegal. I love the UK with all my heart. I love living here, but I think it's wrong not to allow citizens to carry any weapon to fight off an attacker.
Okay, again, half agree. Half agree. Why in the hell you can't carry a pocket knife or something or some mace? That seems like a bit much to me. Mm-hmm. I guess it's the same in Canada. A lot of that stuff's illegal up there too. I'm in Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen. I carry whatever the fuck I want. Generally, I just try to run to the grocery store as fast as I can and then come the hell home because that's where all my stuff is. But that's my attitude. However, as I said earlier, owning a gun actually vastly increases your risk of dying from gun violence. So that doesn't actually solve anything. I don't know that owning a knife increases your chances of dying by knife violence, though. But I suppose it's just as likely that whoever's attacking you could pull it away from you and turn it on you. Personally, I've always favored large, blunt objects, like garden implements or baseball bats, because if I'm going to go at them, I'm not a big lady. If I'm going to go at you, I better knock you down.
I support my American friends in taking their own protection into their own hands. I'm also in favor of teaching.
Yes, and isn't that going just so well for us?
Children self-defense techniques. Jones.
She talks about living in the UK. Her accent's not British, obviously. I don't know where she's from. And her understanding of American cultural politics is clearly not very deep.
Stuart Mill's famous essay on liberty is a foundational text of liberalism. In this work, Mill discusses the tension between individual freedom and government power. Mill recognized the need to limit the role of the state in order to protect the liberty of individuals. Any increase in the state's role and range of function is made at the expense of individual liberty.
Why? Let's let her go for just one more second.
Whenever the state assumes a greater responsibility for managing society, freedom is diminished accordingly. Feminists like to blame all their problems on the patriarchy.
Okay, so all she did was restate that John Stuart Mill thesis. She didn't explain it. So why exactly is everything the government does necessarily limiting to what the people can do? That sounds like a corrupt government. Because a properly functioning government serves to benefit the citizens. That's what it's for. Okay? And if that's not what it's doing, then it's broken.
This great mythical entity, which supposedly oppresses women. They say,
oh yeah, and that definition of government that I just laid out for you, that's the liberal definition of government. Yeah, that's what they thought. That's what that's why the United States exists, was to demonstrate that could be a thing. Yeah.
Say they want a matriarchy instead. But what does that mean? I get the impression what they want is for the state to act as a protective mother figure. But the great mother's caring embrace can quickly transform into a suffocating hug that never ends. The obsessively protective, Oedipal mother watches her children's every move, and she's the happiest when her little ones are safely locked up in their room.
Yeah, and that's pretty creepy. But who the fuck is talking about, like, okay, aside from some very staunch people. I'm not going to say I've never seen anyone wish for a matriarchy, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone really do it so seriously, like planning militant uprisings. Okay. That conversation usually just evolves into speculation about matriarchies in history. Or, tribal stuff. I've never seen anyone come remotely close to planning anything. Or talking about how they wish, just outside of the idea that, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if women ran stuff for a change? Which I can't disagree with that either.
The mother, who's always worried about her children, wants to control them. As a result, her children become completely dependent on her. They are convinced the world is dangerous, and they feel unsafe whenever mother is not there with them.
Yada, yada, yada. That is some just dramatic set dressing. I don't even know, what is all this? The dark mother shit. Okay. Yeah, patriarchy exists. It's a system that we live in that is created by men for men. Okay. And for the first, I don't know, 2,000 years, give or take a couple of decades, they did it at the exclusive exclusion of women, specifically. Okay. Going all the way back to ancient Greece when they codified stuff like the arts and democracy. and that's why we need feminism, because patriarchy is a thing.
Those children never grow up. They never become separated from their mother. They never become independent and free.
Yeah. That would be a bad mother. What the fuck is this? What does this prove, though? Hang on a second. Oh. Okay, this next part's actually pretty good.
Just to be clear, I don't think everyone should be a liberal. I value and celebrate intellectual diversity. Constant debate is essential in a healthy democracy. I just want people to stop misusing the word liberal. If you believe all men are at fault for the actions of male criminals, and if you support legislation to restrict personal freedom, you are not a liberal.
Okay, arguably. But, like, I don't know. Neoliberal? Which is essentially classical liberalism, but, with the stock market. From what I can see, I'm not like a political science expert or anything, but I've done some reading, and it's just a new coat of paint on this, which is 18th century liberalism, which isn't really liberal anymore, and we have all kinds of new issues that we need to address, and just coming at it from the perspective of people who are coming straight out of theocracy is kind of bonkers. But at least she did touch on the fact that she's using that word completely differently than everybody. Okay, you remember that bit about how you cannot be safe and free at the same time? You ready to hear about how the modern West is the safest, freest place ever? Let's go.
The bottom line is, there has never been a safer and more peaceful time and place to live in human history than the West today. Please don't live in fear. Instead, try to cultivate gratitude and try to remind yourself of the freedom you tend to take for granted in your everyday life. The Western world is not a rape culture. If you want to hear stories about an actual rape culture, check out my interview with Dr. Amy Albin, a humanitarian who helps survivors of the Yazidi genocide.
Wow, right? You're just in the shallow end of the pool. Why are you complaining that you're wet? What about those women in the deep end of the pool? They're drowning. Aren't you sad for them? You know, I'm not going to sit here and try and debate whether or not we have a rape culture in this society. Go and watch Revenge of the Nerds. The classic screwball comedy from when I was a kid. Yeah. And tell me we don't live in a rape culture. That shit was played for laughs.
Many of whom are women who were sold into sex slavery and repeatedly raped by Islamic State fighters for years.
Yeah, wow, way to bury the lead. Maybe you should be like, I don't know, fundraising for those women or something. What the fuck? Do you care? Because it kind of sounds like you don't. It kind of sounds like you're too busy contradicting yourself. Whoa.
Despite what feminists want us to believe, most men are not inclined to rape. Most men understand rape is a terrible crime, and they don't want to hurt women in any way.
Yeah, well, that doesn't change the fact that there are a few who do, and they make it just like a hobby, apparently. Because a rapist is not, they don't just do it once, do they? And as I said earlier, it's not just out of the blue for them. So once again, for the record, I think that hating on men is unproductive, but before we go, we're going to go back to the beginning real quick and let Greta give us her tagline, her modus operandi, her raison d'etre, her her goal, her life goal, or her YouTube goal, anyway.
My goal is to heal some of the damage done by feminism to the relationship between the sexes.
That's a big goal. I'm not sure that this video accomplished any of that. You want to talk about painting with a broad brush, honey? Yeah. That's exactly what you've done. and you don't seem to understand what the difference between the big brush and the little brush even is. Woo! We had a long one tonight. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all of that. It was a lot, I know. But I really love taking on some more grassroots women like this, because it really, I think, gives more of a feel of what's actually going on out there instead of just theorizing about it. People who are in media bubbles or academics and whatever, or just talking amongst ourselves. So I have been Rad Mom. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more feminism from a materialist perspective, where we actually look at the practical applications and see how they might play out in the real world. So, share the stuff around, because we're trying to get the conversation going. We're trying to drag it back to reality. And I will see y'all next time. Bye-bye.